Pennies aren't worth the metal they're made of. And that's been true for the last 19 years. That dotted line, that's what a penny's worth, 1 cent. The vertical bars, how much it costs the US Mint to make each penny every year. Metal's expensive. And Donald Trump knows this. For far too long, the United States has minted pennies which literally cost us more than 2 cents. This is so wasteful. So, the order to his Treasury Secretary, stop producing new pennies, let's rip the waste out. And you know, Trump's not wrong, but he's only telling you part of the story. His argument is incomplete because wait till you see how much it costs to make nickels. So when the US Mint makes coins, it's kind of funny to think that profit and loss are real concepts. Take the big, bold quarter, for example. It's made mainly of copper and, surprise, nickel. 5 nickels, to be exact. And metal and manufacturing costs money. In the quarter's case, 11.6 cents. Then you add on administrative costs and actually delivering these coins to the Federal Reserve, and the total unit cost for every single quarter is 14.7 cents. Which means, if you do the math, the Mint makes a profit on every quarter of just over 10 cents. That's actual revenue that comes in from literally making money. But in the pennies case, the Mint loses money. This is kind of a dry table, but I want to show you the number direct from the Mint's most recent annual report. 2024, 1 cent coin, total unit cost, 3.69 cents. As in, it costs 3.69 cents to make 1 cent, which sounds kind of ridiculous, right? But that doesn't fully explain why so many people agree.
It is time to get rid of the damn penny.
Pennies aren't money. They're garbage.
I throw away pennies.
Get rid of it. It's useless.
Because ask yourself, why do we even have coins to begin with? Do we really only make them because of how much profit we make from minting them? Or are coins worth more than their face value because we use them as currency? So I don't have to haul my sheep with me to trade you for that full suit of medieval armor that I've had my eye on. I can just give you money instead. A coin can viably be in circulation for decades, used in transactions hundreds, thousands of times. So what do I care if it costs 3 cents or 2 cents or 1 cent to make each penny? Well, I care if nobody uses pennies.
Here's the problem. They get the change, they bring it home, and they stick it in a jar somewhere.
That's Robert Waples, and we're going to hear more from him in a bit because he has studied the American penny. You know, the Federal Reserve figures there are somewhere north of $1 billion worth of pennies. That's 100 billion pennies that are in circulation right now. Except they're not really circulating. You used to be able to buy things with pennies, but show me a parking meter, a toll booth, a laundry machine, a vending machine that takes pennies. You can imagine a parking meter with $20 worth of pennies in it. That's 2,000 pennies, 11 pounds of pennies that some poor guy has to haul back to the shop just for 20 bucks. And even if you did carry around a bag of pennies to spend somewhere, it's a pain that I see everybody avoiding.
It's inconvenient and it's costly. They tend to fall to the bottom of your purse or your wallet or something, and fishing them out, digging around for them, counting them out. Most people find that just a pain.
When we're not bringing our pennies back, the stores then need to ask the banks for more of them. The bank then sends the word up, and the Mint makes more of them because we're not bringing them back, and we keep losing more money minting these things out.
So the great irony here is that the US keeps minting pennies because so few people are using the pennies they mint. This adds up to about $85 million in losses each year, just on pennies alone, because the Mint makes more pennies than all other coins combined. But here's something else. You can see almost every other coin makes money, except one, that little sliver at the bottom, the next least valuable coin there is, the nickel. You know how much a nickel costs to make? Almost 14 cents. Per coin, the US Mint loses way more money on nickels than on pennies because there's actually more copper, which is valuable in a nickel than you'll find in a penny, which, fun fact, is made mostly of zinc. It's almost a 9-cent loss on every nickel produced. And there's this argument floating around that eliminating pennies just increases the burden on nickels. I'll show you what I mean. Because if something ends up costing however many dollars and 79 cents, so that's 3/4, 25, 50, 75, and 4 pennies, 76, 77, 78, 79. And apologies, I'm Canadian, I've got Canadian coins, but you'll get the idea. Eliminating pennies means we're rounding this to the nearest 5 cents, which makes it cost an even 80 cents. So instead of using 4 pennies, I'm gonna use this more expensive nickel in their place. So maybe we're not saving money by phasing out pennies, we're actually just making the problem more expensive.
So yes, there would be higher demand for nickels. And so if we need to produce more nickels, well, that would offset some of the gain from not producing pennies. But then we'd also be using more dimes and more quarters.
Yes, in eliminating pennies, we can think of lots of scenarios where we'd use fewer nickels and more of all the other coins that make the mint money. Here's an example. Let's say something costs however many dollars and 9 cents. Rounding it up to 10 cents lets me replace all of this with just a single dime.
And so the net cost to the treasury and to the economy of getting away from the penny is almost surely going to be a net positive.
But let's talk about what I just did there. Rounding up. That means you're paying more, right?
The problem is, there's all those prices that end with $1.99. And so wouldn't you round that up to $2 and the poor customer would get, as I say, nickel and dime to penny at a time.
Consider this headline, for example, from Canada about how this kind of rounding up can really add up. $3 million a year from consumer pockets straight into the corporate bank accounts of big grocery chains, all thanks to rounding up on the most common prices. Canada, by the way, stopped making pennies more than 10 years ago, so we've had a lot of time to think about this. But there's a flaw in this logic too.
I thought to myself, that doesn't make sense because people don't buy just one thing. They'll often go to the store and buy multiple items, even at convenience stores. And then there's taxes that get added onto this at the end. So what is the actual last digit in your cash register total?
Yes, the operative question being, how often does your total at the register actually end in a number that you're going to round up? So, bless Robert Waples, he totally geeked out on this. Compiled almost 200,000 transactions across dozens of convenience stores in the US to figure out if, in practice, consumers would really lose out due to rounding. The conclusion?
As I calculated, the customer actually came out slightly ahead if you rounded to the nearest nickel, although, it wasn't a huge amount.
Yes, rounding tended to work in the customer's favor. By exactly what amount of money across 200,000 transactions? Only $105.60, or about 1/20th of a cent per transaction. And by the way, it's worth pointing out, even in Canada, where they stopped making pennies 10 plus years ago, things can still cost $11.92. And if I pay electronically, it's $11.92. You'd only round that to the nearest 5 cents if you're paying in cash, which fewer and fewer people do. So where are we going with this? Bottom line, it feels very much like there's a consensus.
The penny simply just is not worth it anymore.
Even if we could make the penny out of thin air, it'd still be time to get rid of the penny.
Because when was the last time you spent pennies? And Canada's not the only country that stopped making its lowest denomination coin. There's the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Israel, Brazil, Norway, Finland. In this case, the US really is just playing catch up. If it does this at all. Republican presidents like Gerald Ford and Democratic presidents like Barack Obama have at different points wanted to eliminate the US penny. But every mandate, Congress has failed to get the job done.
One of the things that you see chronically in government is it's very hard to get rid of things that don't work so that we can then invest in the things that do. And the penny ends up being, I think, a good metaphor for some of the larger problems that we've got.
So whether Donald Trump can succeed where past presidents have failed, moving America past the penny, we shall see. As for the nickel, That's a whole other story.